vigilance, the action or state of keeping careful watch, standing guard, defending the bulwark between the righteous and the godless. For the past few weeks, I have wanted to address the unfortunate shooting at Umpqua Community College in Oregon. I was shocked and sickened when I heard the news, like many of you. As I looked at this event, I realized that this one was different. This was not just another school shooting. This was not just another mass murder. Something very profound occurred in Oregon that day. I wanted to do that justice. I wanted to do justice to those people who lost their lives. You see, I was attending church at the church of a dear friend. To his friends, he is Rev. Officially, he is Reverend Jim Jones of Pocatello. His church is Blazing Grace Church. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I was attending church there with him, and he asked a question that was fairly profound. He said, "How many of you today would lay down your life before you would deny Jesus Christ? How many of you are willing to give your life in defense of the Master?" He asked us to show our commitment by raising our hands, and so I raised mine. Now, would I lay down my life for Jesus? I believe I would. I believe I could. And I believe in a tough situation that is exactly the direction I would choose. But I also, since this shooting in Oregon, have come to realize that when I raised my hand, I did so with full knowledge that I may never have to make that choice, that I may never be required or put into that position. And that makes it a little bit easier to, make that type of a commitment, knowing full well that you may never actually have to do it. Well, that wasn't the case in Oregon that day. I have given so much thought to those amazing people who stood up and they said, "I am a Christian. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I am a believer. I am a follower. I am a defender of His name." And they said this knowing full well that their very words would cost them their life. Now, as soon as I heard about this, I immediately wanted to comment. But knowing that this was different, that this was profound, I wanted to make sure that I did it in a way that would do honor to that situation, to do honor to those people. I didn't want to use this event as political fodder or fuel. I leave that to the president and some of the other politicians. I didn't want to rush out immediately. Instead, I wanted to think about it. I wanted to take my time and do this the right way. And so I wish to honor those that stood for Christ. I wish to live my life in such a way that I will be affected positively by their great example. We'll continue after the break. Any who know me at all know that I live my life by two great sets of principles. First are the principles of Jesus Christ, and second are the principles of liberty as defined in the Constitution of the United States, which I also believe are the principles of Jesus Christ. If you know me at all, you would also know that I have spent much of my life trying to forward these two sets of principles and help people to understand them and to understand why they are critical. That is why I am really excited today to introduce you to my new enhanced Constitution workshop. This is a full-day course that is made up of 4 parts. Part 1 is all about understanding who the founders are. We learn about them from their own words. And we also learn about the sources that they turned to in order to write the Constitution. And we will see that primarily they turned to God. The second section talks about the challenges and the miracle of the Constitutional Convention. Again, these men came from the various colonies, each with their own agenda and each with their own biases, and they found it unworkable until the great Benjamin Franklin invited them to turn to God. The third section is a focus on the various clauses of the Constitution. We go through it clause by clause, and we discover what these clauses mean, not with our own logic, not with our own understanding, but again, we turn to the words of the founders so that we can understand the truth. And in the final section, we will literally turn to bills that are important right now in America and in your own state. We will examine those in the clear light of the Constitution so that we can understand for ourselves whether they are constitutional or whether they are violations. And then we will talk about specific ways that the American people can take back their freedoms, their country. One of the key things that I think you'll find very different in my workshop is that because the founders turned to God, so will we, and we will weave a very intricate tapestry that includes Scripture and it includes the Constitution. This is critical because I don't believe that you can embrace one without embracing both. So when you come to this workshop, I encourage you, bring your Bible. Now, I want to share just one example of how the tapestry weaves together in a perfect way. We start in the beginning. In the beginning, according to Genesis, God said, "Let us create man, and we will create him in our likeness and our image. And we will give him dominion over the fishes of the sea, over the things that creep on the earth, and over the whole earth." Well, if we are to have dominion over the whole earth, that would include our governments. And this scripture gives us some very important keys to understanding what our government should be like. Remember, God created man in his own likeness and image. Therefore, our governments must be managed. The dominion that we exercise must be managed in the likeness and image of God. The governments we create must be the same governments that God himself would create, which would include many principles, including freedom, liberty, accountability, choice. And now, how does this fit in the Constitution? Let's begin in the beginning again. In the beginning, the founders wrote, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." Now, a study shows that, for the most part, the founders were deeply devoted and dedicated to Jesus Christ and to the principles of Christianity. And as Christians, they saw perfection where? In one person only in the person of Jesus Christ. And so we could change the preamble, and I believe it would still be accurate and would still meet the approval of the founders if we were to say, "We the people, in order to create a more Christ-like union. We the people, in order to create a more God-like union. We the people, in order to create a union that is in the likeness and the image of God." I'm back to consider remedies for the mass shootings in America. Now, as I've listened to political solutions to this problem, I have been amazed that neither the progressive or the conservative side of the issue seems to have an answer that will work. Here's the progressive stand.
We know that states with the most gun laws tend to have the fewest gun deaths. So the notion that gun laws don't work or just will make it harder for law-abiding citizens and criminals will still get their guns. It's not borne out by the evidence.
President Obama said this is something that he is going to politicize. But I couldn't help but notice the untruth in what he said. He talked about gun crime being far less in places that have more gun control laws. That's unbelievable. It's unconscionable that he would lie to the people that way, because we know the truth about Chicago. We know the truth about Baltimore. These places have stringent gun control, and they lead the nation in gun events and gun murders. Well, the progressive solution is more government, more regulation, more restrictions, more controls, and less faith in the good people of America. The conservatives have a different solution.
Guns, no guns, it doesn't matter. You have people that are mentally ill, and they're going to come through the cracks, and they're going to do things that people will not even believe are possible.
The conservative solution comes closer to providing an answer, but it provides an answer that won't work, that won't resolve this problem. See, both sides seem absolutely blind to the root cause of this issue, and that's what I want to talk about today, is the root cause of this issue. But first of all, why won't these solutions work? First of all, the progressive. Restrict guns, restrict guns, restrict guns until nobody has a gun. Well, the Boston Marathon bomber showed us that in the absence of guns, there are solutions that will work. So there's always going to be something else that the sick mind will find that will allow them to complete their evil work. Why won't the conservative solution work? Well, the problem is they want to identify people that have these mental issues and make sure that they can't buy guns or institutionalize them or something. But the problem is, if you look at those who have committed these atrocities in the past, you will see that they have, in most cases, no history of mental issues. So they aren't identified. They'll simply slip through the cracks. You see, in most cases, it's not possible to identify a crazy person until he does something crazy, and then it's too late. So the progressive solution is nonsense. The conservative solution is unworkable. So what can work? The moral solution. That is the answer. In order for us to begin to understand what has caused this phenomenon of all these shootings, we have to look at what has changed in America that has brought this about. Now, the progressives, they will tell us that there's too many guns. There are just too many guns. But the simple truth is, we've had guns in the hands of the American people forever. I grew up in a family where everybody had guns. My grandfather, my father, my uncles, my nephews, my nieces, my friends, we all had guns. I grew up at a time when there was a gun rack in the back window of every pickup, and those gun racks were often loaded with guns. I carried guns to school on a regular basis in the trunk of my car. Now, the truth is, those guns never came out of the trunk. They were there so that after school, me and my friends could go do a bit of pheasant hunting or duck hunting or goose hunting or whatever. But the guns have always been among us. Yet these mass shootings have not always been a part of that. So the guns are not the problem. So we have to go deeper. We have to find the root cause. While mental illness, the conservative solution, is a reality, that also is not the root cause. It's just not. What we have to do is we have to find out why we have more mental illness. Why is it an issue today? And to that, I think we can actually look at three things that have brought up this about. And the biggest thing is that we have raised a generation of young adults that are not a part of something that is bigger than themselves. They're just not. So let's take a look. The first something that is missing is family. How many kids today are born illegitimate? They're born to a single mother. How many of them never know their father? Or if they do know their father, they only see him on rare occasions. How many of them are raised by single mothers, and how many of those single mothers are addicted to drugs and welfare dollars? Because of this, these children grow up and they are not connected to a nuclear family that is larger than themselves. Therefore, they're not a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So they're alienated, isolated. The second thing that is missing is country. We don't have our children pledge allegiance to the flag in school anymore. I used to do that every day. We don't teach them that their country is good, that it is great, that it's something to be proud of, to defend, and to love. And because of that, they're not connected to this country, which is bigger than themselves, which demands something from them of sacrifice and determination. The third thing is God. We have taken the Ten Commandments off the courthouse wall. We have taken the nativity scene out of the courthouse square. We have taken prayer out of school and God out of school. And instead of teaching Christian principles, we are teaching our children in school the 5 pillars of Islam. In many of our homes, parents no longer take their children to church. Children grow up having no concept of who God is, having no concept of what the Ten Commandments might be. And so here we have a generation of young adults who have grown up not knowing who they are or how they are connected to their family, to their country, to their God. They are angry. They are isolated. They are disconnected. They are narcissistic. Because they are not a part of something bigger than themselves, they only think of themselves. And when the world treats them badly, they take it out on the world. Now, the truth is, the progressive solution won't fix anything. The conservative solution might catch one or two, but the problem will continue. So we have a short-term fix that can help, and a long-term fix that can correct this problem. The short-term fix. The Second Amendment says that we must have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right must never, ever be infringed. Ever. We must not take away the people's right to defend themselves. Now, I know that there are those that are worried that a gun in school is going to cause problems. Well, the fact of the matter is, we have people carrying guns all over the place. And they are not the problem. We just don't see a problem with them. In fact, where there are more guns, what we see are reduced incidents of crime. So we need to allow these people to have guns. Now, that won't stop the attacks. They'll still continue to come. But instead of a bad guy like this idiot in Oregon coming in and killing 9 before taking his own life, perhaps he would come in and just barely get started when someone would stand up and stop him in his tracks. We can't stop the carnage, but we can reduce the level of the carnage, and we must allow people at least the opportunity to try. That's the short-term fix. But it won't stop the problem, because the problem is based on a generation of screwed up young adults. The solution after the break. You will fight as you train. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to a truly amazing group. It's the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Now, this is a group that was created by Idahoans for Idahoans and is dedicated to preserving and protecting your Second Amendment rights, right down to the lowest levels of government. We're talking county and city levels here. This is an organization that works very closely with most constitutional representatives to make sure that your rights are perpetually protected. At a time when anti-gun zealots are fighting against every Second Amendment principle, these zealots include Michael Bloomberg, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and many, many more. As they fight against us, we must stand. We must stand with good groups like the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance and fight for the principles that will keep us free. Freedom isn't free. It was never meant to be. It never has been. It never will be. It requires the participation of all the people. So I encourage you to visit the website of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. I'm back. Let's look at a solution with a proven history of success. The long-term fix. There is only one long-term fix that will work. We must return to the principles that I've just mentioned. John Adams said very clearly that the Constitution is completely insufficient to govern a people that is not moral and not religious. He said it is only appropriate and will only work for a moral and religious people. Well, that applies to a lot of different things. If we want a well-balanced group of young adults to come up and take the reins of this country, we must bring them up connected to family. We must no longer accept the nonsense that it is okay for two people to live together, to produce children, and not do so in a nuclear family that is connected through the principles of marriage. We must not allow our schools to create a group of children who hate their country. When they try this, and they are doing it everywhere, we must stand up and fight, and we must tell them no. And finally, the parents of America need to reacquaint themselves with God. They need to know Him themselves, because if they don't know Him, they cannot share Him with their children. They need to bring their children back to church. They must raise children who know what the Ten Commandments are and who live by those principles. This is my prayer. I hope we can do it. May God bless you, and may God bless America.